a huge new discovery from first principles that we're making here in Peru. I will just start to move through this presentation. Great. Okay, so I am a geologist. I'm naturally an optimist, and of course I will be making forward-looking statements. So Hannan is a Toronto venture-listed company. We are exploring for copper and silver in Peru. We're a first mover into a relatively new part of Peru, an area over the Andes into the high jungle on the eastern side of the Andes. We have a major system. As I said, we've got tenure that extends over 120 kilometres, about 660 square kilometres of tenure that we've been slowly acquiring over the last year and a half, with really only the first work started at the end of last year and starting this year, because that's when we had the first permits granted. This is a sediment-hosted system, very similar to the Kufa-Schiefer in Europe or the Copper Belt in Africa. Big basinal scale controls on a system. The Kufa-Schiefer, which is probably the closest analogue, is the largest single silver producer on Earth, even though it's a copper mine, and the largest, the sixth largest copper producer in the world today. It's been mining for 50 years. It's got another 80 years ahead of it. So these form generational style projects. And that's what we're hoping to do here, of course, in Peru. We have this very long trend. Here's just a few significant results. There's many different levels of mineralization. We have this very consistent horizon that we're finding between sort of 2 to 5 meters thick at 2 to 5% copper and then 1 to 2 ounces of silver. This has context over the 100 kilometers, but the grade is good, and continuity appears good. We're demonstrating continuity at various scales here, and I'll run through that, but that's really the secret here. I'll talk to you a little bit about the geological magic and the driver, and salt tectonics is a large part of that. You don't generally hear necessarily why that's important, but I hope to give you a little bit of the flavor there as well. In terms of where we exist, we're, as I said, over the eastern side of the Andes, but it isn't deepest, darkest Peru. It is a relatively easy place to explore, and it's really opened up over the last 20 years. I've been exploring in Peru since the mid-90s. I worked on a project up in this part of the world about 20 years ago, and I know the infrastructure then was a lot tougher. We're flying into a town of 150,000 people, and we're within 2 to 2.5 hour drive on bitumen roads from any of our projects along that plus 100 kilometre trend. We extend from the very north up from Gera down to Tabalosos and then what we call SACANCHE. The SACANCHE claim alone is 80 kilometres. We'll be focusing in mainly on the southern parts of SACANCHE and the southern area there. That's where a lot of our work has taken place. The other key aspect here, just to touch on it, is social licensing work. It's a new area. It hasn't been explored extensively in the past for minerals. The oil guys were here, and we've benefited hugely from that data that's come freely available from hundreds of millions of dollars worth of exploration by the oil guys in the 1980s and early 1990s. But we put a lot of effort in. We've got more social licensing people to gain access across this property, and we're taking that very seriously. We know how to operate in this country, and that has really been a key part of our of our program, to have a respectful and very active social program. In terms of our capital structure, here we are, about 75 million shares issued, about $1.6 million in cash today. We've got enough to run a program that we had for $1.5 million that we started at the start of the year. We have been halted a little from our plans, of course. Peru is not having some great outcomes. Exploration was allowed to start about a week ago in Peru. We're taking the position that we're not putting field teams back on the ground at this moment, but we're looking on a weekly basis. That being said, we've still got samples going through to the lab. So the work we did from December through to March, we even had samples that we couldn't access until a week or so ago when the country opened up again. So we're still we've still got results flowing over the coming month or so. The team, we're a lot of grey behind the eyes, it appears, here today, and we're the team who've done it before too. The last cycle, we through single discoveries bought a couple of companies to $500 million worth of market cap from first principles, and this is our next chance to do it again. A good team. We've got a great mix of explorers and other people who you need in exploration these days to get on the ground and make things happen. You see Quinton, who's starring today, it appears, is very active as an advisor in this stock, and he's been a great support. We've got Kira Talbot, who runs exploration for Lundin Mining, and some very good technical people. Lars, who I've worked with for the last 12 years, who really is the main person on the ground, plus some other people that, our main interest in life is to make discovery and to do it properly on the ground, and really that's the motivation behind the people here in this company. A few photos very quickly. Good access, bitumen roads, all year round working in the south, and dry season working from January, February through to September in the north, where it gets a bit more topography, but relatively easy. It is jungle, so that's the opportunity really here, is that a lot of the discoveries haven't been made before. We're making discoveries along roads and more easily accessible areas, and then cutting our way up through into the jungle. So a lot hidden by the plants, no doubt. So a stratigraphic section through the rocks, a lot of detail here, but really don't get too involved. Other than I want to show you that the three main important things in discovery or ore systems and how to work out how discoveries forms are source, transport, and trap. We have some very good source rocks in purple here. The salt, that was a key part of this basin, wasn't really understood until the oil exploration started, and that salt becomes very rich brines that leaches the rocks, and then salt is lighter than the rock mass and basically floats up through along big structures and brings the copper and silver into areas where what we call redox boundaries, which is where the rocks suck up literally the metal. And this is where we find ourselves at a number of different levels through the rock mass here. These stars are the key levels over a number of hundreds of meters, and we're seeing the context of those across the 100 kilometers. So we've got very good context and geological control here. We're not working with our eyes shut, that you often are in a very early stage exploration project. Just in detail here, once again, this will be available to all of you listening, but lots of different rocks through the rock mass. Here's a more detailed version of the stratigraphic column. We've got these different levels forming, so it's not just long, it's actually forming through the geological sequence as well, which gives us a number of different targets, from thinner high-grade zones to very thick. We're getting gossans up to 50 to 80 meters thick, running not only copper but also lead zinc that's peripheral and part of this system, but very much copper silver is our target here. So very high grades that we're finding in outcrops and boulders across this whole area. This is in the next minute I'll show you the mineralization forming at lots of different scales. This is a 300 kilometer long by 180 kilometer long wide geological model. We've got good control from the oil guys. I've got to keep it rushing, but basically it shows you the control. Here's Here's the 30-kilometre trend from the southern part of the project. Here's Quinton on the ground, where we sampled 3 metres at 2.5% copper. And within basically this 20-kilometre trend, we're finding this mineralisation. Here's another outcrop, 2 metres at 6%. So we are looking at just one smaller part of the larger system here. If we look at the very southern end of that last slide, we're now starting to define continuity not only over those tens of kilometres, but at the kilometre or couple of kilometre levels. So here from where it says 2 outcrops at 60 metres apart, we found some new discoveries only just recently. The samples are in the lab as we speak, 2 kilometres south of those. Those discoveries are over 500 metres within that area. So it is very important. The key aspect here is to define continuity of these systems of these grades, and these systems form over multiple kilometres. So it's very important that we can find continuity at this scale, which we are. So that's a very important part of the recipe that is coming together, and literally in results that we're seeing coming to the table now. Notwithstanding, here's 80 kilometres north in one of those northern areas where we're seeing the same geology, same multiple percents of copper, and it's not only just the length, as I said, it's the width. So if we look at the cross section here in the northern dotted line that crosses that slide, we'll look in a cross section which is basically slicing like a loaf of bread across that property. That's a 7 to 8 kilometre wide section, and we're finding all these grades of copper where this mineralisation subcrops or comes to surface in these rivers here. So lots of high grades over this very large area. Lots of work to do. We're still got an active social program ongoing at the moment. Samples coming to the table. We'll be back on the ground when it's safe and appropriate to do so. Lots of boots on the ground, 4 teams ready to go in Peru when we make that decision. And ideally drilling this project, it was ideally going to happen later this year, but that will be pushed into next year sometime now. So a very new discovery. The prize is huge, great analogues. We've made huge inroads into the geological model and got great context, and people have made discoveries before, and we're doing it again here. So thank you very much.